Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you. Hey everyone, Joshua Hanlon here at World War Brick in Minneapolis, and I'm joined by Dan Siskind from Brickmania. He's going to be taking us through the massive Roman fortress here that you have on display at the show this year. So tell us about this layout.
Well, this is a work in progress. This is first just to say that, so you're going to see some gaps in the walls and things. This is a Roman fort. It's based on historical Roman forts. Some of the stuff that you see here was kits that Brickmania put out, and then add-on instructions that we've offered ever since then. So, yeah, you're looking at a Roman fort. This would have been about 2,000 years ago, if not even longer. So when Rome conquered a new territory, first they would build a wooden walled fort, and then after they'd been there, established relationships, were able to get local providers to get stone, mason, and workers. They would build a more permanent settlement, and this is it. It would be a fortress. So certain cities, like like York in the UK, things like that, they started out as Roman forts.
Yeah, they would have started out as something very similar to kind of what you see here.
Yeah, they're finding the architectural remains of similar forts like this all over Northern Europe, and in Syria and North Africa as well. It's the same plan. They had the same architecture wherever the Romans marched. Their forts and their architecture was the same.
Yeah, that's a really interesting feature of this, is that it was kind of like a modular almost, and that you could pick up this model and take it anywhere kind of around the Roman Empire.
Yeah, exactly. And they did that. And what they were doing was basically making a piece of Rome into bringing it into the hinterlands or whatever, where the unconquered barbarians were, and this would be their protection. So Rome wanted to have a symbol of power. This was it, and this was supposed to be like an impregnable fortress, a symbol of Rome. So.
There you go. Well, we can launch on in here, so you can start by talking about maybe just like the outside walls and the size of this whole thing, because you've certainly gone for a very large layout with this.
And this isn't even large. For Roman fortress standards, this would be like considered a very small fort.
Okay.
So, we should actually, if you look at the way that the military formation, the legionnaires are lined up here, that's 80 legionnaires, and that makes a century when they add all the extra support troops, 100 guys basically, and the big long building there, that's the barracks. So that would be like the fortress would basically be the outer walls would protect the legionnaires, and this outer wall would be built by these legionnaires. When the Romans marched, they were actually not just soldiers, but they were construction workers too. So they all had to learn how to build this stuff. So the outer wall here follows a plan similar to every Roman fort. Like I said, originally it would be wood, and then they'd build up these palisades, and then they convert it to stone as they could do it. So we have all these sections. In our kits, we gave instructions to build these little 16 by 16 modular sections of wall, but it doesn't take much to expand them out to, this is like a 6 times as long section. And what we're doing is we're going to try to enclose an area that would be able to have 4 of these barracks. So there'd be a total of about 400 to 500 soldiers, plus support, administration, all the other things that a Roman fort would need. It's like a city onto itself. Mostly Roman soldiers, but they'd bring auxiliary troops, which on the wall here we have these archers. So they would be like, say, Syrian archers. They were famous for their, being like professional soldiers, and the Roman legionnaires fought a certain way. The Assyrians, I guess, would have their own specialty, which happened to be archers. So we have this Roman fort they'd be called auxiliary troops. They're not really full Roman citizens, at least not in the early days. So we have the soldiers here. This is a legion. A legion has a centurion, or each one of these, I'm saying that wrong. The legion would be the whole unit, the whole entire garrison. But these legionnaires, usually they're groups of 80. Every 80 you'll have one centurion who's like the commander. And when we get to the barracks, I'll explain the relationship a little bit more of that. So.
And I know some of these are kits you've made in the past, but the minifigures are still available from Brickmania?
They are on occasion. We don't keep them in stock. If you go to our retail stores, you'll probably find them year-round. But on the web, because we make them in batches, at least small batches, and these figures are particularly high detailed. So there's a lot of 3D printing. We actually have to we 3D print the parts that aren't the Lego parts, obviously the shield, the helmet. I think the only part that's actually Lego is the figure itself, plus the wooden staff of the pylon, the spear. So everything is custom done. We print it, paint it, or we 3D print them, paint them, and then we UV print the patterns on top of them. So there's a lot of handwork that goes into each one of these figures. Some of them, some of the figures are like upwards to $40, $50 for each because there's so much custom work that goes into them.
Yeah, but you get that incredible level of detail that really takes it to just kind of, pushing the boundaries of what you can do with a Lego minifig.
And we actually just made this group of soldiers just for this event, and we've never made. This is the biggest concentration of this particular figure that we've put together so far. We've done batches and sold them, but they go out to customers in 2s and 3s, not 80 at a time. So we're going to do it again, and every time we make a new barracks, we'll have to make the troops that go with it. So this is very much a work in progress, meaning that it started small. It was a quarter of this size, sitting in the GHQ store, and it was kind of like just the samples of the kits as we put them out, and here's some things that you can do. And then we're like, we're going to eventually expand this, and it was just waiting for the time to do it. So, of course, I had these other big builds that took up my time.
1 or 2 moderately sized builds that people might have seen on Beyond the Brick as well.
Yes. So now that those are completed, they're installed in locations. We don't have to drive them around. Finally able to put our attention to the fort. So I would say in a few months, we'd like to have a little bit more of this filled in, no gaps in the walls. And we'll bring it around to places. It's eventually going to end up in our store in Washington, D.C., the Capitol store. So.
Very exciting. Well, we'll continue to follow with progress, but we can check out more of what you have here. So which building do you want to dive into first here and tell us about?
Well, let's just do an overview. Okay. So then we can, because I could pull them aside.
Sure.
So what we have in front of us, the castle walls itself, this is a porta. That means it's a portal, it's a doorway. The interior buildings, this long, skinny building, and these other 2 that are kind of work in progress, these are barracks. So the barracks would hold 80 regular legionnaires, plus a Centurion has an apartment at the end, and it's very specialized. The next building behind it, that big thing, that's the commander's house. That is the Praetorium. So when a commander gets appointed, it's usually like a very... when you were appointed the commander of one of these forts, you're basically the governor of the fort and all the territory around it. So they are very lavished in luxury.
Sort of a political as well as military type role.
Right, and they're usually not from the same, maybe even from the same region that the troops are. They're usually like, it's like almost like royalty or something. So they're from a different strata of society altogether. So they have this lavish house. And then the one next to it, in the middle there, it actually lines up on the axis of the fort. So if you come in the main door of the fort, and walk straight ahead. That's the headquarters of the fort. It's the Principia, and it's like basically the principal building. So that's the army command. The army, and the Legion is commanded there. That's their military barracks. It's where they keep the treasury. That's where they keep the payroll for the soldiers, and then it's a headquarters. So that's a very important building. It's like our equivalent of in a town today would be like the town hall or something. Yeah. So a very important building. That also is a symbol of the authority of Rome, but it's also strictly a military operation, which all these towns were military. It's a camp. It's an army camp. There would be a town that grows up around it, but that would be like governed from within. They keep the riffraff out. So, but next to it is another building, another important Roman building with no windows. That's a granary, and every army marches on its stomach, and that's a very Roman term. And one of the most important buildings in a Roman fort, if not the most, was the granary. And you don't think about it, but the food storage, your food storage gets taken away. You have your food supply, everything. Then your army is basically useless. So there would be several of these big, sturdy, strong buildings that are almost impenetrable to attack, but they're made very sturdy so that rodents and other animal critters can't come in. The food won't spoil, and because of no windows, they wouldn't be getting a lot of like rain or weather inside. You have to deal with moisture, and they're actually built off the ground so that there's air circulating under the floor. So when we get the Roman baths done, they are heated from below with the heat from a furnace. The warehouses of the granaries have done the same way. So they want to keep their food supply nice and fresh.
Yeah. So. No, that is super interesting. What are the other buildings that kind of you would have typically found in a Roman fort that you guys hope to do in the future?
Well, there would be, so every fort usually is around, it's based around an industry. Maybe like whatever territory they conquer, they produce a certain thing. Maybe it's iron or something. So you'll have workshops. So there'll be, if they're producing iron or steel, they'll be smelting that. They'll have workshops, sometimes in the fort, sometimes out. And then maybe they're workshops for repairing the armor. And then other buildings would be more administrative, housing for more administrative functionaries. Like say you're, an important scribe or an important, dignitary or just a higher ranking army officer. You might have your own villa. That's called a tribunal. We don't have those built yet, so they will be built. They're like miniature versions of the Principia. It's like a typical like villa when you think of like life in Rome, and that's what basically they were doing, was importing the Roman society, Roman architecture, Roman culture into the untamed lands. And you'd go inside one of these houses and it was supposed to be like you're walking back into Rome. So that's also why everything is a fortress on the outside and then it's all lush and green on the inside. Okay, so we're standing in front of the barracks. This big long row of buildings is the barracks, and this one here, these are barracks in progress. The end of the building is where the Centurion, he's the commander of the 80 men that live in the barracks, and the rest of the barracks is split up into these small rooms. You can see the foundations of which we're building another set of barracks. Each one of these little sections here houses 4 men and all of their equipment. So actually it's 8, I believe. So it's 8 men and all their equipment. So it'd be bunk beds inside of there. Whereas the commander gets this lavish, villa basically on its own. So we'll pull the roof off of here. This is where the Centurion would live.
Oh, I love it. So yeah, you can easily take the roof off.
Yeah, it's fully detailed. Yeah, each one can come off separately, but this case I'm just gonna pull it towards us. It's got a little jostled when we moved it, but basically it's the living quarters of the Centurion, and we've done some crazy mosaic works. The doors open, the trunk, even the trunk is decorated, so it's like a Roman decorated thing. We actually printed the floor, so those are actual wood grain tiles that we printed, and you have to put it together. Shutters are printed, the windows. So it's like, being as a fortress, you can actually shutter up the windows the way they're supposed to. Fireplaces are where they should be. Let me see, I can turn this around. So there's the Centurion sitting at his table. So he would probably have some servants as well of his own, depending on how much, how wealthy he is. And they're typically like an officer class, whereas the legionnaires are just professional soldiers.
And those are printed like Roman mosaic pieces that you guys do? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that one, doesn't that have a familiar looking duck on it? It's a mosaic of the Lego duck, Romanified. I don't know.
Romanized, yeah.
Romanized, yeah. So of course we hid those. We hide those sort of things in all of our products. So, there's like games. There's typical like there's like these are actual Roman board games. Roman. I don't remember what the printing is on the parchment there, but I'm sure it's like a shopping list in Latin or something.
Yeah, it's those little details though that are so cool and really kind of bring it to life, and you have those realistic details.
Yeah, and this is a lot of fun to do. So just the rest of it would be just rooms for the troops. There's like you've seen them all. They have like these crazy racks for the weapons. So each trooper would have, his pilum stored, his shield. So the rooms, we're not looking inside of one right now, but this front room would be where they store their weapons, and the back room would be all of their bunk beds. So it's actually kind of Spartan living. They wouldn't have any food preparation in there. They would actually go to a communal kitchen, and every room would be issued a bag of wheat, and they'd have to go once a day. Some poor guy would have to get up early and go make the bread for their whole entire unit. So every 8 guys had to, bake their own bread every day. So the bakeries will eventually be built into this whole layout.
We haven't mentioned yet, but you've also got some examples of Roman kind of artillery, yes, throughout here.
So these are siege weapons, not really necessarily guns. This one here is an onager. It is a basic pullback. Oops, I pulled it back too far. But torsion driven, a weapon system. And I think we can actually launch something with this one. So they put it on backwards.
It uses one of the rubber kind of pieces there, so you have some playability.
Yeah, it's actually the exact way that the weapon works in real life. Except maybe I'll pull my hand on it. But you basically toss. whoever built this stuck the 1x2 brick in there.
Oh, there you go.
So yeah, but I mean that's exactly the way it works. You have it's a rubber band basically, and back in the day they would use like sinews from animals or something, but it works the same way. It's just a tension-driven weapon. And then this one this was done by a gentleman actually in England who volunteered to make us this. It's a ballista, caraballista, which means it's a horse carriage, or it's a ballista, which is the weapon, mounted in a cart that they could essentially roll it to where they need it to be, and then fire their weapon, which was a giant crossbow essentially.
Yeah.
So caraballista. We have a trebuchet here that I almost demolished with the roof. A trebuchet is a gravity-driven weapon. So when they crank the trebuchet back, which is this arm here, it's a giant catapult essentially, and then balanced with a counterweight, pull this back, when they release the pin, which is like letting the weight drop, it causes a slingshot effect, and it'll throw a rock really far. Depending on the size of your trebuchet and the size and the weight of the projectile, it's a pretty deadly weapon. And these are just 3 of the examples of typical Roman, weapons, and they would be standardized throughout, the Roman areas.
Right.
So if you were like a Roman legionnaire and you were dragged from one, marched from one location to another, and you'd find all of these weapons and all these equipment to be familiar and standardized. So this is the Praetorium, and it's basically the house of the commander, and it's a villa. It's actually a very large villa. Every one of these fortresses had something like this. Maybe not this lavish, but this is a kind of a bigger fort that we're aiming to build. So typical Roman style. Exterior walls have very little openings in them, but inside like super like lush and green courtyard. So outer sanctum or outside riffraff, inner sanctum where like it's peaceful, quiet, and luxurious. So we'll start with the entryway. So the base commander, or the governor, whatever you want to call him. This first chamber here is where the public will never usually enter the building beyond this opening chamber here, or this initial chamber. So at certain times of the day, the commander would basically hold court in this first room here. And if you had a problem, or you needed a decree, or you needed permission to do something, you would come to see the commander here, and they'd have a scribe or something being able to write out orders or whatever they end up doing. So he'll be on one of the seats on either end of the room, and you come and you pay homage. You have to, you do your political stuff is basically. So this is basically the only real public room that you'll ever enter the building, unless you're one of the servants or one of the family. Otherwise, you may never get in past this building. This is the inner sanctum. This is the commander. He's very well protected. So let's. I can pull the roof off the courtyard, but it's not very interesting. We'll actually go to this level. I'm going to actually open. We'll start with taking the top.
There's a couple of levels here. Wow, yeah.
Yes. So let's say we want to. You get, if you're invited, like say you're an invited guest or part of the family of the emperor, or the governor, you would be invited into this inner courtyard. So the inner courtyard, you can see, has doorways. It's basically this is the passageway to the rest of the building. There's no internal hallways. It's all on the outside. So if you're coming in, you're most likely going to go to one of the other sort of public rooms. This is a Roman dining room. So every one of these, every villa, every household has a dining room. And the one thing that you'll notice about the Roman dining room is that it doesn't really have tables. It's like a central table, but you essentially eat on your side, lounging on a couch. So there's stories from the Bible of the some of the emperors and politicians reclining while they eat. That's what they mean, because they literally lay on their side, propped on their elbow. You'll see the classic images of them eating grapes and things like that. That's exactly how they would dine. They would spend their afternoons lounging in the dining room, being brought food and wine. And this is only like, this would be like the head of the household and maybe one or two guests, the family. Through this door is actually the kitchen. So this is the principal kitchen of the household. So you'll have servants and stuff working in the kitchen. Of course, it has a pantry. All this stuff is real. I'm not making this up. This is
No, for sure. I mean, it makes sense. These are all things you need.
yeah. So this is the kitchen for the household, and in this kitchen, when I say for the household means the Roman citizens, the governor and the governor's family. None of the servants count as the household, so they don't even eat the food that they cook in here. So their job, the servants here, their job is to cook and serve the family. Everything in here is basically property of the family. The Roman government would pay the officer, the governor, and he would be in charge of maintaining this whole household. So these guys, servants, all they do is serve. They do exactly what they're supposed. The name implies, and they hardly ever will go anywhere beyond this kitchen area or maybe the serving area. But if you happen to be like one of the lucky ones who live in the house, you would be treated to going to this is the entryway to the private chambers. And I probably don't need to open the doors, but this is how you would get up to the second floor of the house here. But this area would be like a receiving area for very important guests. If you have household guests, they might be allowed to come in here. Probably not allowed to go up the stairs, but that's how the family goes to their private area, which is the second floor, which I'll put on. I'll put that. Let's do the second floor after. Okay. We'll pull off the roof of this guy here. If you happen to be part of the family, you would be allowed to go to the bath area. So through the door from the private area or through the courtyard, you can get to the baths. So one thing that's particular about the Roman times is they had indoor, they weren't toilets, but they were more like, it was like an indoor outhouse. so there were seats, you'd crouch over a hole. It would be very familiar to a modern person. You have what would essentially be an outhouse, a hole in a shelf that you parked your butt on, or you would urinate, there's a urinal in there too. And then some poor servant would have to come and clean it out later. But this area here, this is the toilet area. And then the other areas would be leading to dressing rooms and perhaps a sauna or some other, preparatory part of the Roman bath ritual, I guess is what you'd call it, because they're very bath oriented. Aside from the civilized Romans eating on their reclining couches, they always had, paid very particular attention to having baths. It was very much part of their day-to-day routine if you could afford it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pull this top off here. Pull the other wing off. Oh, that comes off in sections. I forgot about that. I built this a while ago.
You got to remember all the engineering you did here.
Yeah, well, while we're looking in the top, this is actually the servants' quarters up here. So when I was saying the servants' quarters, servants don't really get to do a whole lot in the house. They do have their own quarters, so they're kind of banished. Either they're working here in the kitchen or they're staying in the servants' quarters. So it's kind of a very Spartan existence. They get a couple of beds. You get a little bit of privacy, but typically one room would be an entire family. So you'll have a servant's family, several families, and then they get their own dining area here. It looks like the roof crushed the... These are backwards. Put them on backwards. All right, fix that. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. So they have their own kitchen. So the servants have to cook food separately. It's like at the goodwill of the family to make sure to provide them with food. We'll pull this off. Below the servants' quarters is the stables. So every governor's going to have their important horses. They'll probably have a chariot of some sort inside here. I think when they were excavating some of the aftermath of Mount Vesuvius, they were finding horses and very elaborate chariots inside the homes of the really important wealthy people. So this is copied pretty much from that. There's also a private office for the commander, basically a room with important scrolls, important decrees would all be kept there. And if they had to meet, like say an emissary from the emperor or something like that, they would be in this room. So it's a private office. And then the last bit of room here is this is the bath. This is the private bath of it's basically an indoor swimming pool of the base commander, the base commander's family, and I guess important VIPs would be allowed to be in there too if they were an important enough guest. If you were on the level of talking face to face with the governor, you might be allowed to go indulge in the bath in the house here.
And once again, you see the printed tiles on the floor and the wall and everything. That
look in the stuff in the office, the walls in the office, the walls in the dining room. I mean, it's this. We kind of went all crazy. This has the most printed pieces we've ever put into a project, and so many people worked on this. So when I say this has my name on the box, I would contribute to this. I'm not, I can't take the credit for this. All of this stuff is all printed. Our artists did a great job. Our printers did a great job. I think Slam lost his mind doing this thing. So he's the one doing all the mosaics on the walls. So we do have the rubber ducky. I don't know if you can see the laurel leaves on the head of the.
Wow, very important detail.
Yeah, that's great when the governor's sitting in there playing with his rubber ducky.
Well, this is so cool though to see that attention to detail, and thank you so much for taking everything apart here.
Still more. We got to put this. Yes. I took off the second floor. This is actually the private residence of the second floor here. So this is where the governor's family would live. We're making a mess here. I'll have to. So, looks like the governor's child fell over. So, the governor's child is on a rocking Trojan horse. That's every kid wants to be on a rocking Trojan horse. So this is actually the governor playing the Battle of Troy with his child here, his offspring. Let me get this roof. I think I can pull this beam off here. Oh, the whole roof comes off. Look at that. Now you can see inside.
There you go. Brilliant design.
Yeah, this is a lot of work. We only made 10 of these. There's a reason. It was all this printing and stuff was so expensive. I got the. But you have the whole family. This is basically a family room for the family of the governor. We did some crazy printing. We created bearskin rug and a couple other things, and all Roman actual games and lanterns and things that would actually be found in the a Roman house of this stature. And then they have their own private bedrooms as well. So their beds didn't look very comfortable by our standards. It looks like more like a giant crib for humans.
You took what you could get back then, I guess.
Yeah. And if you'll notice that this has like a plastered wall. Also very, it wasn't necessarily particularly rare to have a plastered wall, but we were doing research, and the Roman decorating style actually changed over time. So like your taste, you want to be like fashionable. So at one point, like, hey, having bare white walls was super fashionable, and then the next 20 years later, having mosaic walls was super fashionable too. So we're trying to show that the different qualities, different like tastes and stuff are our family's trying to keep hip.
Yeah. I mean, just like in modern society, things change. How house designs change. Yeah.
Trying to keep up with the Romans, I guess. Yeah, there's some. I think one of the servants is probably on a thin ice there in the pool. So every one of these houses it's kind of a self-contained unit. It has its own bath, its own kitchen, its own. The only thing they couldn't do is grow the food. The way that the roof is built, so if there was rain, heavy rain, the water from the roof would actually replenish the cistern that would be connected to that fountain. If you have a fountain or a pool, it's actually very a functional piece of furniture equipment inside of one of these houses. You'll see that in almost all of the small villas. The roofs point in for a reason.
Yeah, I mean it's it's its own like ecosystem in addition to living quarters and everything.
Yeah, it's meant to be that way, self-sufficient all the way. So very military, very it has form and function. So this is the Principia. This is the town hall, so to speak. It's the military headquarters and bank and all that all rolled into one. I took the courtyard off when I moved it here. The front of the building would typically have a courtyard. It's almost always the case. I've never seen one of these without the courtyard in front. It's basically so soldiers could be mustered in there, given their orders, then dispersed out. The first few rooms would be like pay house or just storage rooms. This is the real heart of it. So inside the main hall here, I think I can pull this off. Get it off in one piece here. Yeah, take the roof off here. So we're basically talking about a hall, and this should be familiar to anybody who's a castle fanatic. This would be the equivalent of a great hall in a castle, where the owner of the castle, the baron, the whoever, would basically keep court in here, and this is no different. So on one side of the hall, you have a dais, and that's where if you were assembling your important officers and stuff, you'd be standing on that dais giving orders. You'd hold court, military court, in a building like this. So you would assemble your troops. You're going to give orders. Every one of these buildings also has a temple, So in Roman times, there's various gods of worshipped and various patrons and saints. Well, I guess they weren't saints back then, but you would be
The whole pantheon of gods that they had.
yeah. And every unit had their own pantheon of gods. So that, you might be worshiping your whatever your legion worshipped. So it would be different from, like, say, the guys down the street in the different legion. So, but part of it is the staffs of the soldiers. You'd have. This one has a statue of another commander, or a famous commander of this unit. But behind it is also the staffs. They're basically the heraldic devices of the unit. So they're actually considered to be sacred relics too. So they're locked up in this, protected in the heart of the essentially the fortress here. And then the smaller rooms would be libraries and pay rooms. So they usually underneath the altar of the temple would be a secret trap door, and then below that would be where they stored the payroll for the entire unit. So this is very, there's a religious function, there's a very bureaucratic function as well. So and totally practical. Again, fortress from the outside. You can muster your troops in there, and then in a time of, like, you need, if you need to have a refuge, this would be like your inner castle of the building. So this would be the second strongest. You've got the outer walls. This is basically a fortress within a fortress.
I think that's always something really interesting, especially kind of Roman society, is how intertwined a lot of those functions were. I think compared to our society today, where a lot of those things would be kind of cordoned off a lot more, I think that stuff was much more intertwined.
Well, it was intertwined, and it was also a very military function. The whole society was organized along a military function. And that continued into when the Roman, the empire receded and the influence faded. These buildings still retain their importance. So you'll see town halls, but most importantly, that a lot of castles that sprung up in medieval times were actually built around old Principium. So what they would call the Great Hall in the castle was actually 500 years before was the Principium was the headquarters of an old Roman fort. So these buildings would last longer. The outer walls of the castle may be gone, or the fortress may be gone, or some of the buildings may be gone, but the Principia would last. Some of them are still standing today, and they look like they're part of medieval castles because they were actually turned into medieval castles.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear kind of the research you've done as well. How is it easy to find information on this? Obviously, this is very old history now at this point, and you have to piece this together through archaeology and whatever written records there might be.
Well, it's actually surprisingly easy to find the history of the Roman forts, because they have these forts are being excavated and researched all over Europe, all over North Africa, and they're remarkably similar all throughout the geography. So they'll excavate one of these in, say, the Middle East, and it looks exactly the same as one that's in the plains of northern England or something like that, or France or Spain or Algeria. So there's a lot of information about it, surprisingly a lot. So for me, doing the research wasn't that hard, but kind of piecing enough all together in English was a little bit more difficult. And I was able to, because there's a museum in England, there's a museum in Germany, was able to get a lot of research material. It's just not, because this is ancient Rome, there's just not it's not as romantic as castles and the medieval times kind of thing. So it is a little bit more compartmentalized, but there's surprisingly a lot of information out there.
Yeah. Well, that's really neat. So is there an interior in the granary there as well?
Not really. I think it's just empty now. It's here. Let's pull the roof off and find out. But if my memory serves me correctly, there's not much in it. One thing that any truck driver might recognize is the loading dock. So the Romans invented the loading dock. They would literally take ox carts, back them up to the loading dock, and for the most efficient loading into the granary. So let me pull the roof off here. I don't think there's anything in here. Yeah, it's just a big, long, empty building, and that's exactly what it would be like inside. In reality, there might be piles of grain, and they might put hoppers of grain in there. They'll build up some walls, put the grain in there, or else just store sacks of food and other resources. So let's say for every barracks, you're going to find at least one of these. So the final when this fort's finished, there'll probably be a dozen of these things inside of here. Along with the workshops and other functionary buildings.
Very cool. Well, this is all fantastic work here, so I appreciate you taking the time to really show us through all the buildings. So,
There'll be more.
Yes,
there's more coming. So.
Awesome. So tell us, then what are your plans for kind of where you'll have stuff in the future and where people can maybe see more of this?
So, well, this will be what you see here. Parts of it will be on display at Brick World, but we're going to try to end up the final resting place for this. We're aiming to have in our store in Capital, DC store, which is next to the venue for Brick Fair. So, I mean, for anybody who knows where Brick Fair is, we will fill this all in. So you have more barracks, at least 3 barracks, several granaries, workshops, and I'm going to do a bath and probably some tribunal buildings, which are like smaller villas that will be inside of this fort. So, of course, filling in the blanks, the holes in the walls. It's all a matter of how much I can afford and how much time we have to work on it. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. So, what is your experience like working on something like this, which is very different from the Macon Island, the Missouri, these massive ships and things? What are the differences with something like this versus those models?
Well, this is the cool thing about this is it's semi-modular. I can rearrange the buildings anytime I want to. We can change the shape of it as long as it's within the established pattern of what the fortresses look like. So there were forts that had the same pattern, but they were various sizes. So some of them would hold 400 legionnaires. Some would hold 2,000. So you'd have like a whole legion maybe stationed in one fort. So I guess what today we'd call a division in the army. So the interesting thing is what the Romans laid out in military terms of like their organization. It's the same exact form that we use today. So anybody who's like been in a barracks or been in the military would like look at this and go, that's familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of certainly like Western militaries is built on the foundation of Rome.
Yeah, you're right, Western. Yeah, there's a completely different train of thought, going on the eastern side. So or South American or something like that. So but this is something that's going to be very familiar. And if you live in Europe or I guess North America by default, you're going to see a lot of the same sort of organizing structure. The architecture, it's all like part of modern society that we're living with today. The building that we're in right now is very much inspired by the same sort of architecture that this is right here.
There you go. So once again, I know you mentioned earlier that the minifigures for like the physical stores, you'll have those stocked a lot. So if people can make it to one of the physical Brickmania stores, they might be able to pick those up.
Right, and we'll keep some of the things in production on and off. The chariots and stuff, we'll keep doing them. We'd like to do some other units. So like the one particular unit we have with these red shields, we like to change it up and do some different, have a different legion so we can mix it up a little bit, not have the same guys. And I would eventually like to have some adversaries so we can have some Gauls and some Celts and the Visigoths and all the different like ancient tribes. Just to do something different. Assyrians, you got so much. There's so much interesting. Carthage. I mean, they name it. There's so much interesting culture, interesting history that we can incorporate this, and it would still be just, within a certain, couple hundred years time frame would be okay to have all pushed together. So.
Yeah. Well, so much to look forward to there. So once again, thank you, Dan. It's great work as always here, and thank you for the work that you and the whole team do on the whole show here. It's always amazing.
We have a great time. Appreciate you coming.